The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council stretched wider than any human-made structure Captain James Walker had ever seen. Tall windows of strange crystal material let in light from 3 different suns. Walker tried to look confident as he walked forward, but he felt small. His blue uniform with Earth's new Space Force patches seemed plain next to the shimmering robes and metal-infused skin of the council members. "The human wishes to speak," announced the council leader, a tall being with skin like polished silver. His voice echoed through the chamber without any visible technology. The other 32 council representatives turned to look at Walker. Walker cleared his throat. "On behalf of Earth and all humans, I thank you for allowing us to present our case for membership in the Galactic Council." He pressed a button on his wrist device, and a hologram appeared showing Earth's achievements, their cities, space stations, and the fleet of exploration ships they had built in the 5 years since discovering faster-than-light travel. A low murmur spread through the council. One representative, with scaled skin and eyes that glowed orange, laughed openly. "Is something funny, Counselor Rax?" asked the council leader. "Forgive me," said Rax, a member of the Valerian species known across the galaxy for their military might. "But these humans think building a few ships qualifies them for council status. My species had colonized 3 star systems when we were at their stage of evolution." Another council member, tall and thin with 4 arms, spoke up. "Their technology is primitive. They only recently discovered principles our youngest learn in basic education." This was Lox, representative of the Nexians, whose technology was considered the most advanced in known space. Walker felt his face grow hot. "With respect, what we lack in advancement, we make up for in determination and creativity. Humans have overcome many challenges." Yes, interrupted Rax. "Every species says the same when they first reach the stars. But the Council has standards." The council leader raised a hand for silence. "Captain Walker, while we acknowledge humanity's achievement in reaching this stage, the Council must deny your application for full membership." He paused as Walker's shoulders dropped. "However, we will grant Earth observer status. You may establish a small embassy on Council Prime, and limited trade routes will be permitted under supervision." Walker opened his mouth to protest but stopped himself. This was better than nothing. "Thank you for this opportunity. Earth will prove its worth." "I'm sure you believe that," said Lox. "Not unkindly. All young species do." After the formal proceedings ended, Walker found himself in one of the tower's many gardens, staring out at the sprawling city of Council Prime. Buildings reached impossible heights, vehicles moved in perfect harmony through the air, and beings from 100 worlds walked the streets. "First rejection is always difficult," came a voice behind him. Walker turned to see Lox approaching. "You seem to have made up your mind about humans before even meeting us," Walker said. Lox's 4 hands gestured in what might have been a shrug. "It is not personal, Captain. It is simple fact. Your bodies are fragile. Your lives are short. Your technology is thousands of years behind ours. What could humans possibly offer the galaxy that we don't already have?" "Maybe something you haven't thought of yet," Walker replied. Lox made a sound like tinkling bells. Laughter, Walker realized. An admirable spirit. "Perhaps in a few centuries, we will revisit your application. Until then, enjoy your observer status. It's more than most achieve on first contact." Walker watched Lox leave before looking back at the alien city. In his pocket, he clutched the small data device containing Earth's full report, including details the Council hadn't let him present. Their unique approach to quantum physics, their unusually adaptable nervous systems, their capacity for creative problem-solving. "They'll see," he whispered to himself. "Someday, they'll see what humans can do." He couldn't know then how soon that day would come, or what terrible threat would make the galaxy turn to the very species they now dismissed as weak. 3 years passed since Earth joined the Galactic Council as observers. The small human embassy on Council Prime had grown, and a steady flow of trade ships moved between Earth and friendly Council worlds. Captain Walker, now Ambassador Walker, stood before a large window in his office, watching the alien traffic outside. His assistant, Tom, rushed in without knocking. "Sir, you need to see this." He placed a data pad on Walker's desk. "Just came through on the emergency channels." Walker picked up the pad. The screen showed a planet with large, dark patches spreading across its surface like ink in water. "What am I looking at?" "That's Nova Colony, a mining outpost in Sector 8. Population of about 50,000. This was taken 3 days ago." Tom swiped to the next image. The same planet, but now entirely black. "And this was taken yesterday." Walker felt cold. What happened to the people? No one knows. No distress signals. No survivors found. It's the third world to go dark this month. Before Walker could respond, his communication panel lit up. "Ambassador Walker, your presence is requested in emergency council session. Immediate attendance required." The council chamber was in chaos when Walker arrived. Representatives shouted over each other, while the council leader tried to maintain order. Walker found his observer's seat at the back of the room. Silence. The council leader's voice boomed. The room quieted. "We face an unprecedented threat. 12 worlds have now been affected. Our scientists have identified the cause." He gestured, and a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. The image showed something Walker couldn't quite understand. A shifting mass of darkness that seemed to both absorb and bend light around it. "We call them Void Eaters," explained Lox, the Nexian representative. "They appear to consume all organic matter and energy. They leave nothing behind." "Have we tried military action?" asked Rax, the Valerian. A military commander stepped forward. 3 battle fleets engaged a small group of these entities near the crawl system. "We lost all ships. Weapons had no effect." Walker watched as footage played of advanced council warships firing at the dark masses. The energy weapons seemed to vanish into the darkness without effect. Then, one by one, the ships themselves were enveloped in blackness and disappeared. "Our scientists have determined these creatures operate on a quantum level," continued Lox. "They don't just consume matter and energy. They somehow transfer it elsewhere. Our weapons and shields are useless." Walker raised his hand, surprised when the council leader acknowledged him. "What's their trajectory? Where are they headed next?" A star map appeared, showing the path of destruction. The dark trail was heading toward the core council worlds, and beyond them, toward Earth. "How much time do we have?" Walker asked. "At current speeds, the first Void Eaters will reach major population centers within 6 months," said Lox. "We've already begun evacuations, but there are billions of lives at stake." Rax stood up. "We must combine our military forces. All council races must contribute ships and weapons." "Didn't you hear?" shouted another representative. "Weapons don't work." The chamber erupted in arguments again. Walker sat quietly, thinking. He pulled out his personal communication device and sent a message to Earth. "Send Dr. Morgan's research, all of it. Now." Hours later, when the council had exhausted itself with arguments and temporary measures, Walker approached Lox as the session ended. "Counselor, I believe Earth might have something to contribute." Lox's 4 arms made a dismissive gesture. "This is not the time for humans to try gaining political advantage, Ambassador." "This isn't about politics," Walker insisted. "We have a researcher, Dr. Eliza Morgan. She's been studying quantum consciousness, how living minds interact with quantum fields." "A primitive understanding, no doubt," Lox said. "Maybe, or maybe a different understanding. These Void Eaters operate on quantum principles our weapons can't touch. What if we need to approach the problem differently? Not with more advanced technology, but with a completely different perspective." Lox looked at Walker for a long moment. "Bring your research to my laboratory tomorrow. I doubt it will help, but at this point." The Nexian looked back at the star map, still showing the approaching darkness. "At this point, even primitive ideas are better than none." Walker nodded, not bothering to hide his small smile. Finally, humanity would have a chance to show what they could offer the galaxy. Dr. Eliza Morgan didn't look like someone who might save the galaxy. She was small with messy brown hair and always wore the same type of lab coat, with too many pens in the pocket. When Walker's message reached her at the International Lunar Station, she had been awake for nearly 20 hours straight, staring at complex patterns on her lab screens. "They want all my research?" she asked, blinking at the station commander. "The Council aliens who said humans were too stupid to join their club." "That's right," the commander said. "Ambassador Walker says it's urgent. Something about a new threat." Morgan rubbed her tired eyes. "Fine. Send them everything. But I should go too. They won't understand half of it without me explaining." 3 days later, Morgan stood in Locke's laboratory on Council Prime, surrounded by technology that made Earth's best equipment look like children's toys. Locke and 3 other Nexian scientists watched as she pulled up her research files. "This is what we've been studying," Morgan began, showing brain scan images. "Human consciousness creates specific patterns in quantum fields. We believe these patterns allow our minds to perceive reality in ways that measuring devices can't." One of the Nexians made a sound like a snort. "This is basic knowledge. All sentient beings affect quantum fields." "Yes," Morgan agreed, "but humans do it differently. Our brains evolved on a planet with high biodiversity and constant threats. We had to develop flexible thinking to survive. This created a unique neural architecture." She showed more scans. "See these patterns. They don't follow expected quantum rules." Locke leaned closer to the images. "Interesting. But how does this help against the Void Eaters?" Morgan pulled up footage of the dark entities. "From what I understand, these creatures transfer matter and energy to another dimension, right? What if they're not just physical beings, but consciousness-based entities? What if they perceive reality differently than we do?" Walker, who had been quiet in the corner, spoke up. "And if they perceive reality differently, maybe we need to fight them on that level, not just with physical weapons." A young Nexian named Trell moved forward. Unlike the others, his expression showed curiosity rather than dismissal. "This reminds me of ancient Nexian philosophy before we became focused on pure technology. The idea that consciousness shapes reality, not just observes it." "Exactly," Morgan said, excited to find someone who understood. "What if these Void Eaters can be disrupted not by attacking their physical form, but by interfering with their consciousness field?" Locke made a dismissive gesture. "This sounds like primitive mysticism, not science." Trill turned to his superior. "With respect, Counselor, perhaps that's exactly what we need. Our advanced science has failed against this threat. The human brain processes reality differently than our more evolved neural networks. They make connections we would not consider logical." "That's right," Morgan said. "You've evolved in ways that made your thinking more efficient, more logical. But sometimes solutions aren't logical. Sometimes they come from what you might consider errors or noise in the system." Locke stared at the human researcher for a long moment. "What are you proposing, exactly?" "Let me work with your quantum physics team. I believe we can develop a device that creates a resonance field based on human neural patterns. If the Void Eaters operate by transferring matter to another dimension, we might be able to disrupt that process by introducing our chaotic human perception patterns into their field." The other Nexians began to object, but Trell spoke over them. "I volunteer to work with Dr. Morgan. We have nothing to lose by trying." Locke looked at the footage of planets being consumed, then back at Morgan. "Very well. You have 2 weeks to show progress before I report this to the full council." As the other Nexians left, some making sounds of disapproval, Trell approached Morgan with forearmed gestures of greeting. "I have studied the earliest traditions of my people," Trell said quietly. "Before we became purely logical, we believed that different species perceive different layers of reality. Perhaps what you call a weakness, your chaotic, emotional thinking, is exactly what we need now." Morgan smiled for the first time since arriving. Let's find out together. Walker watched from across the room, feeling a spark of hope. Maybe humanity's greatest strength had been hidden in what the Council saw as their greatest weakness all along. News of more worlds falling to the Void Eaters spread panic across the galaxy. Refugee ships filled space lanes as people fled from systems in the path of destruction. The Galactic Council met daily, but solutions were scarce. In the private chambers of the Council leader, an emergency meeting took place. Walker stood uncomfortably as Rax, the Valerian military commander, paced the room. 3 more battle fleets lost, Rax said, his orange eyes burning with anger. Our best weapons are useless. Our shields might as well be paper. He stopped pacing and turned to Walker. Your scientist, Morgan, has she made any progress? Walker kept his face neutral. Dr. Morgan and Trell believe they're close to a breakthrough. Lox, seated nearby, made a sound like tinkling bells, his version of a scoff. Close means nothing if another 5 worlds fall while we wait. The Council leader raised a hand for silence. Ambassador Walker, we have run out of options. The Void Eaters will reach Nexian Prime in 2 months, and Earth shortly after. Whatever Dr. Morgan has, we need it now. Walker nodded. I'll take you to see their work. In the lab, Morgan and Trell had been working non-stop for weeks. Tables were covered with strange devices, a mix of advanced Nexian technology and crude human modifications. Morgan looked exhausted but excited as the Council members entered. We've done it, she said without greeting. We can disrupt the Void Eater's dimensional transfer process. Rax stepped forward. Show us. Trell activated a small device in the center of the room. A holographic display showed a simulation of a Void Eater, a dark, shifting mass. Morgan pressed several buttons on a small metal box. The device emitted a soft purple glow, and in the simulation, the Void Eater began to break apart. The quantum resonance device creates a field that mirrors human neural patterns, Morgan explained. The chaotic, non-linear thinking that you all considered primitive actually creates quantum noise that the Void Eaters can't process. It disrupts their ability to transfer matter between dimensions. Rax leaned closer. If this works, we could mount these devices on ships. There's a catch, Trell said. The resonance field requires human neural patterns as a template. The devices must be calibrated to specific human brainwaves. Non-human species can't provide the right pattern. A heavy silence fell over the room. The Council leader looked at Walker. You mean to tell me that the galaxy's survival depends on humans? Morgan couldn't help a small smile. Ironic, isn't it? The very thing you saw as our weakness, our primitive neural architecture, is what makes us uniquely capable of fighting this threat. Lox, who had been examining the device, looked up. How many of these can you build? With proper resources, hundreds within a week, Morgan said. But each will need to be calibrated to a human volunteer. Rax turned to Walker. Will Earth provide these volunteers? Walker straightened his back. Earth will do whatever is needed to save the galaxy. But in return, I want full Council membership for humanity. The Council members looked at each other. The leader nodded slowly. If this works, you will have earned it. 2 weeks later, a fleet of 50 ships gathered at the edge of the Taxon system. Each carried a quantum resonance device calibrated to a human volunteer on board. Walker stood on the bridge of the command ship, looking at the tactical display. The Void Eaters had been spotted approaching the system, which had been evacuated days before. All ships report ready, said Tom, now Walker's military aide. Walker took a deep breath. This is our one chance to prove humanity's worth to the galaxy, and to save it. He looked around at the human crew, mixed with alien allies who had once looked down on them. All ships, move to attack formation. Let's show them what humans can do. The fleet moved forward as dark masses appeared at the edge of the system. The battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy was about to begin, and for the first time since humans had reached the stars, The most advanced species in the galaxy were looking to them for salvation. The first contact with the Void Eaters was worse than anyone expected. As Walker's fleet approached, the dark masses seemed to sense them. Instead of continuing their slow consumption of the abandoned outer planets, the Void Eaters changed course directly toward the ships. "They're coming right for us," Tom said, his voice tense. "All ships, prepare to activate quantum resonance devices on my mark." Walker watched the tactical display as the distance closed. "Wait until they're within optimal range. Remember the simulations." The bridge crew, a mix of humans and aliens, worked with focused intensity. No one spoke about how much rested on this moment. If Morgan's devices failed, there would be no second chance. Void Eaters entering optimal range in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. "Now," Tom called. "Activate all devices," Walker ordered. Across the fleet, humans connected to the quantum resonance devices closed their eyes as the machines scanned their neural patterns. The devices powered up, creating a field of purple energy that spread out from each ship. On the tactical display, Walker saw the purple fields touch the leading edge of the Void Eaters. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the dark masses began to ripple and break apart. "It's working," someone shouted. But the celebration was short-lived. The Void Eaters, after initial disruption, began to reform. The dark masses shifted and changed shape, adapting to the resonance fields. "They're learning," Walker said, feeling cold dread. "All ships, increase power to the devices." The human volunteers connected to the devices grimaced in pain as the machines drew more deeply on their neural patterns. The purple fields brightened and expanded. Again, the Void Eaters broke apart. But again, they began to reform, adapting even faster. "We're losing them," Tom reported. "The devices aren't having a lasting effect." Walker stared at the display, thinking desperately. Then he noticed something. The Void Eaters seemed to break apart most at the points where two or more ships' fields overlapped, creating interference patterns. Morgan said human brains work differently because they're chaotic, emotional, making connections that more logical minds wouldn't consider, Walker said, half to himself. Then louder. "That's it. We're using the devices wrong. It's not about individual human patterns. It's about how humans think together." He turned to the communications officer. "Order all ships to form a new pattern." Walker quickly sketched a formation on his tablet. "Like this. It mimics the neural pathways in a human brain when they're collaborating on a problem." The order went out, and the fleet began to move. Ships that had been in standard military formation shifted to a seemingly random arrangement. As they moved, the overlapping resonance fields created new patterns, complex, chaotic, but with an underlying structure, just like human thought. The effect was immediate. Where the overlapping fields touched the Void Eaters, the dark masses didn't just break apart. They seemed to dissolve completely. Their connection to the other dimensions severed. They couldn't maintain their presence in this reality. "It's working," Tom reported, excitement in his voice. "All ships report the same effect. The Void Eaters are dissolving where our fields touch them." Walker felt a surge of pride. "Continue the attack. Push forward." The fleet moved deeper into the system, their formation constantly shifting like thoughts in a human mind. The Void Eaters tried to adapt, but the unpredictable changes in the resonance field patterns made it impossible. One by one, they dissolved into nothing. In the heart of the fleet, Walker received a transmission from Morgan, who was monitoring from a safe distance. "You figured it out," she said, smiling through the holographic display. "It's not just individual human neural patterns that make the difference. It's how we think collectively. The chaotic beauty of human collaboration." Walker nodded. "The very thing they thought made us weak and primitive." After 6 hours of steady advance, the last of the Void Eaters in the system were gone. Reports came in from long-range sensors. The main Void Eater force had changed direction, moving away from Council space. As the fleet regrouped, Walker received a priority message from the council leader. Ambassador Walker, the leader said, his silver face showing what might have been respect. The council is unanimous. We owe humanity a debt we cannot repay. Return to Council Prime. There is much to discuss about Earth's future place in the galaxy. Walker looked around at his exhausted but triumphant crew. Humans working alongside aliens who had once dismissed them. Together, they had saved the galaxy. Tell the council we're on our way, Walker replied, and that humanity is just getting started. Word of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light. As Walker's fleet returned to Council Prime, ships from dozens of worlds lined their path, flashing lights and alien gestures of respect and gratitude. On the command ship, Walker stood at the main viewport, watching the display with a mixture of pride and disbelief. Still getting used to it, Morgan asked, joining him. Walker shook his head. 3 years ago, they wouldn't even let us join their club. Now they're treating us like heroes. Because we are heroes, Morgan said with a tired smile. Her work with the quantum devices had left her exhausted, but there was a new confidence in her eyes. We saved them when their advanced technology couldn't. The fleet entered orbit around Council Prime, where an official welcome awaited. Before they could dock, however, emergency alarms sounded across the ship. Sir, Tom called from his station. We're picking up a distress signal from the Valerian home system. The Void Eaters. They're back. Walker turned sharply. I thought they were retreating. This is a different group, Tom explained, bringing up a tactical display. Larger than the one we defeated. They must have changed direction when they sensed the first group was destroyed. Walker felt his moment of triumph fade. How long until they reached the Valerian homeworld? Less than 20 hours at their current speed. Walker made a quick decision. Tell the council we're redirecting to the Valerian system. All ships with functional quantum devices are to follow us. Within an hour, Walker's fleet had changed course, joined by 30 more council ships. The Valerian High Commander, Rax, transmitted from his own flagship as they entered hyperspace. Ambassador Walker, Rax said, his orange eyes uncharacteristically humble. The Valerian people thank you. We once thought humans too weak to defend themselves, let alone others. We were wrong. Walker nodded. We'll discuss history after we save your world, Commander. The journey took 18 hours of tense preparation. Morgan and Trell worked continuously to improve the quantum devices based on data from the first battle. The human volunteers trained to better control their neural patterns, creating stronger resonance fields. When they arrived at the Valerian home system, the sight was terrifying. The Void Eaters formed a mass larger than a small moon, already beginning to consume the outermost planet. All ships form neural pattern formation, Walker ordered. Remember, we need to think collectively. The devices work best when our minds work together, like we're solving a problem as a group. The fleet spread out in the complex pattern they had discovered in the previous battle. The human volunteers connected to the devices focused their thoughts, imagining they were working together, creating a mental web of connections. As the resonance fields activated and began to overlap, something unexpected happened. The purple energy didn't just spread outward from each ship, it began to flow between them, creating visible connections like synapses in a giant brain. Morgan, are you seeing this? Walker asked over the comm. Yes, she replied, excitement in her voice. The devices are connecting with each other. The neural patterns are synchronizing across the fleet. It's like we've created one giant human mind. The combined resonance field grew brighter, pulsing with energy. When it touched the Void Eaters, the effect was even more dramatic than before. The dark masses didn't just dissolve. They seemed to be pushed back into whatever dimension they had come from. But the Void Eaters fought back. Dark tendrils reached out, trying to envelop ships at the edge of the formation. 2 vessels were hit, their resonance fields flickering. We're losing the Nexian cruiser and the Earth vessel Horizon, Tom reported. Their devices are failing. Walker gripped the edge of the tactical display. We need to strengthen the connection. Everyone with a neural link, focus harder. Think about why we're fighting. To save not just ourselves, but everyone. Across the fleet, humans connected to the devices closed their eyes. They thought about Earth, about alien worlds they had visited, about the billions of lives at stake. They thought about working together, different species united by a common goal. The purple energy field surged, brighter than before. Where ships had been lost, the field reorganized, closing the gaps. The giant neural network adapted, just as a human brain would route around damaged areas. The Void Eaters began to withdraw, their dark mass shrinking as more of their substance was forced back to their home dimension. It's working. Trell reported from the science station. The dimensional gateway they use is collapsing. Walker watched as the largest Void Eater attack yet began to fail. Humanity had proven itself again, not through superior technology or physical strength, but through the very qualities the Council had once dismissed: adaptability, emotional intelligence, and the ability to work together in creative, unpredictable ways. 1 month after the final battle with the Void Eaters, the Great Hall of the Galactic Council looked very different. Where once humans had been relegated to observer seats at the back, now a permanent position stood near the center. Walker sat in that seat, watching as representatives from across the galaxy filed in for the historic meeting. The council leader stood and raised his hands for silence. Today marks a new beginning for our galaxy. The threat of the Void Eaters has been eliminated, thanks to the courage and unique abilities of humanity. He turned to Walker. Ambassador Walker, would you please stand? Walker rose, feeling the eyes of every alien species upon him. For centuries, the Council has judged species based on technological advancement, military might, and evolutionary age. The leader continued. We believed these were the measures of a civilization's worth. We were wrong. Humanity showed us that diversity of thought, adaptability, and what we once dismissed as primitive neural patterns can be strengths, not weaknesses. Lox, the Nexian representative, spoke next. Our scientists have studied the quantum resonance technology developed by Dr. Morgan. We could not have created it ourselves. Our minds are too structured, too logical. We needed the human perspective, the ability to make intuitive leaps, to think emotionally as well as rationally. From his place near the front, Rax, the Valerian commander, nodded. And in battle, the humans showed us something we had forgotten. That a fleet is more than ships and weapons. It is minds working together, adapting, finding new patterns that the enemy cannot predict. Walker looked around at these beings who had once looked down on humanity. Now they spoke with genuine respect. He caught Morgan's eye where she sat with Trell among the scientific advisors. She gave him a small smile and nod. In recognition of humanity's contribution to the galaxy, the council leader said, Earth is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges. Furthermore, Ambassador Walker will join the Council's leadership circle to ensure that the human perspective is part of all major decisions going forward. Applause filled the chamber, or various alien equivalents of applause. Some stomped appendages, others flashed lights, and a few made musical sounds. But the meaning was clear: acceptance and gratitude. Later that evening, a reception was held in the Great Garden of Council Prime. Representatives from hundreds of worlds mingled with the human delegation. Morgan found herself surrounded by alien scientists, eager to learn about her research. The most important thing to understand, she explained to the group, is that what you saw as our weakness was actually our strength. Humans think messily. We feel while we think. We make intuitive leaps. We contradict ourselves, and that creates neural patterns that the Void Eaters couldn't process. Trell, now her close colleague, added, many advanced species evolved toward more logical, structured thinking. We Nexians did. The Valerians did. Even the council leader's species did. We became more efficient but less creative. Humans showed us what we had lost. Walker joined their circle, having escaped diplomatic conversations for a moment. The real lesson here is that diversity makes us all stronger, not just diversity of species, but diversity of thinking, of evolutionary paths, of perspectives. The council leader himself approached, his silver skin reflecting the garden lights. Ambassador Walker speaks wisdom. For too long, we judged all species by how closely they resembled our own development path. We must now rebuild the council on a new foundation, one that values different evolutionary approaches as strengths, not flaws. As the celebration continued around them, Walker, Morgan, and the human delegation stood together, looking up at the alien stars that had once seemed so distant and unreachable. Now those stars were part of humanity's home. "What do you think comes next?" Morgan asked quietly. Walker smiled. "For the first time, I don't think anyone knows. And that's what makes it exciting. Humans and aliens working together, thinking differently but respecting each other's strengths." He looked around at the gathering, at former enemies now allies, at logical minds now open to emotional insight. Once seen as weak, he said, now humanity is not just the galaxy's hope. We're part of its future. Above them, the stars shone bright in the alien sky, no longer distant points of light, but beacons calling humanity to a new destiny among the vastness of space, not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals, bringing their unique gift of human perspective to a galaxy that had finally learned to value the strength found in difference.